We've all been there. You slap a quick fix on a problem, you put a bandage on it, and you just hope it goes away, only to see it pop right back up. Well, today, we're going to stop treating the symptoms. We are going to learn a system for digging deep, finding the root cause, and actually solving problems for good.
Have you ever felt like you're caught in a time loop? That same nagging problem shows up at work or at home. You think you fix it, and then, sure enough, a month later, there it is again. It's incredibly frustrating, right? And it points to a huge flaw in how we usually approach problem solving.
The heart of the matter is this. We're wired to react to what's right in front of our faces. We see the symptom, the missed deadline, the bug in the code, and we patch it up as fast as we can. But we're not digging deeper to find the actual disease that's causing it. And because of that, we're basically guaranteeing that we'll be fighting that same fire again and again.
So what if there was a better way? Well, there is. It's a structured, proven method that high-stakes fields like medicine and aviation use to make sure that when something goes wrong, it never happens again. And that is the exact system we're going to walk through step by step. Okay, so our journey starts with the most critical and, the most often skipped part of the whole process, actually seeing the problem for what it is. I know it sounds obvious, but rushing this first step is probably the #1 reason we end up solving the wrong thing entirely. And this isn't some new idea. Way back in 1945, a mathematician named George Polya laid out this classic 4-step framework. And what's so brilliant about it is its simplicity. See, our first instinct is to jump right to step 2 or 3. Let's make a plan, let's do something. But Polya knew the real magic happens in step 1. You have to understand the problem first. So how do you actually do that? How do you force yourself to slow down? Well, Polya suggested some really simple but powerful things. Try to explain the problem out loud, but in your own words. Can you draw a picture of it? Ask yourself, what do I actually know for a fact here? And what am I just assuming? These little exercises force you to get clarity and separate fact from fiction. And this brings us to the official term for this whole process. Root cause analysis, or RCA. The key thing to get here is that RCA isn't about finding a quick patch. Nope. It's a systematic, detective-like process for finding the basic causal factors, the deep, hidden reasons, so you can pull them out by the roots. All right, so once we really understand the problem, we get to switch roles. Now we become detectives. Our job is to follow the clues, look at the evidence, and track down the real culprit. And here's the twist. The culprit is almost never a person. It's a flaw in the system. This right here, this idea, is the absolute game changer in all of modern problem solving. It's a massive mental shift. We have to stop looking for someone to blame. Instead, we start looking for the broken process, the confusing procedure, or the flawed design that set up a perfectly good person to fail. Now, a fantastic tool to get you started with this detective work is called the 5 whys, and it is as simple as it sounds. You just state the problem, and then you keep asking why, like a curious 5-year-old. Each answer you get becomes the next question, and you just keep digging why, until you hit a wall. That's usually where the real root cause is hiding. And just to show you how deep this can go, the 5 whys is simple, but in the real world, wow, it gets complex. Look at this. The initial problem was simple. A metal oxygen tank got sucked into an MRI machine. But a real investigation shows it's never just one thing. It's a whole web of issues. The department was short-staffed, which led to rushing. The equipment looked too similar, which caused confusion. There were no whirling systems. A proper RCA uncovers this entire ecosystem of failure. Now, finding all those interconnected factors, that takes a diverse team. Of course, you need an expert, someone who knows the system inside and out. But, and this is so important, you also need an outsider, someone who doesn't know the process. Why? Because they're the one who will ask the dumb, obvious questions that everyone else stopped asking years ago. And those questions are often pure gold. Okay, so your detective work is done. You found the root cause, or more likely causes. So now what? Well, now you have to actually design a solution. And this is another place where it's really easy to stumble, because it turns out not all fixes are created equal, not by a long shot. What's the most common trap people fall into? It's relying on human vigilance. We write a new policy, send out a memo, or we tell people to just be more careful or pay better attention. Look, this approach is pretty much doomed from the start because it ignores a fundamental truth. Humans make mistakes, especially when we're tired, stressed, or overworked. This is where a brilliant tool called the action hierarchy comes in. It basically sorts solutions based on how effective they really are.
See, weaker actions, like writing a new rule, they rely on people remembering to do the right thing. But stronger actions, they change the system itself to make the mistake hard or even impossible to make. You know, like a plug that can only fit into a wall socket one way? That's a strong fix.
So here's the takeaway. This is your new rule of thumb. When you're building a solution, your goal is to have at least one action from those intermediate or stronger categories. If your entire plan is just a bunch of weaker actions, that's a huge red flag that you haven't actually solved the problem.
So you've done it. You picked a strong fix. Fantastic. But you're not done yet. A plan on a piece of paper is totally meaningless. You have to be able to prove that your solution is actually working out there in the real world.
And the pros do this with something called an outcome measure statement. Now that sounds fancy, but it's not a vague goal like we hope things get better. No, it's a super specific scientific statement about what you will measure, for how long, and what success looks like in actual hard numbers.
Here's a really clever example. Let's say you're trying to improve hand hygiene in a hospital. How do you measure that? You can't stand over everyone's shoulder and watch them. That's impossible. So instead, you measure a proxy, like how much hand sanitizer is being used. If your goal is a 25% increase in gel usage over the next 3 months, well, that's a clear, simple, measurable outcome.
Okay, this brings us to the final, and you know what, maybe the most powerful part of this whole process. This is how you take a single failure in one small corner and turn it into a massive improvement for the entire system.
And look at that. We're right back where we started, with George Puglia. His fourth and final principle was to look back. He knew that the real learning, the real value, comes after you've implemented the fix. It's in that reflection. This is how you get better, not just at solving this one problem, but at solving all problems in the future. In a company or any organization, this means you have to share what you found. A lessons learned report isn't just paperwork. It is a critical tool. It's a warning signal you send out to everyone else in the system, telling them, hey, we found a weak spot here, and you might have it too. It lets them fix the problem before it can hurt them. That is the very definition of a learning organization. So let's just recap that journey real quick. We went from that feeling of frustration, of being stuck in a loop, to a powerful, structured process. First, we truly understand the problem. Then we put on our detective hats and hunt for the systemic roots. Then we engineer a strong, lasting fix. And finally, we learn from the whole experience to make sure it never, ever happens again to anyone. Look, this isn't just theory. This is a practical toolkit that you can start using right away. So the final question I'm going to leave you with is this. Think about those recurring frustrations in your own life, at work or at home. What problem are you going to solve differently tomorrow?